All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. This is the Common Rule Podcast, and I am your humble narrator. My name is Danny. And today's conversation is, I hope it's inspiring for you comic book nerds out there. The next time someone says, hey, what can reading comic books do for you? You go ahead and you point them to this podcast and point them to the conversation with Mr. Martin Pinedo. He's an illustrator and graphic designer here in Phoenix, Arizona, who owes a little bit of his career to comic books and his passion for comic books, I would say. We really get into not just only comic books, but MMA fighting. We'll dork out on that for a little bit. But his story of where he's at today is very interesting, and how he draws from a lot of different inspirations and a lot of different things in his life to be able to, I would say, manage the interesting balance between making art for commercial purposes and making art for himself and his family, and how he manages to keep those separate. All right. Well, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the conversation here with Mr. Pinedo. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
You got it.
Especially on short notice, man. Thank you so much.
Right, one day to the next.
Yes, and we have Pinedo.
Pinedo, yeah. Split it up. Pinedo.
See, you know what's funny is that it took me a while to figure out that that's what your name was. It's like, man, because I was thinking, we were talking, we did the podcast with Sick Ass Fool, and I was thinking the whole time, and like, man, this Pinedo. I'm like, man, that name. I'm thinking to myself, that name makes no sense. And I looked at your card for the longest time,
right? And
it didn't hit me until seriously last Thursday.
Seriously?
Yeah, like, oh man, he's Pinedo. Oh shit. He took the little hat off the...
Right.
I get it. So yeah, I was like, oh my God, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just fucking, hey man, I'm slow sometimes.
No, you're good. You're good. It took me a while to make that up too.
Yeah.
Actually, they made it up for me, those gringos. Here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when I moved here from Cali, every person that I met that wasn't Mexican or part Mexican, they'd call me Pinedo. No, yeah, they'd call me Pinedo because they didn't know it was Pinedo. I'm like, okay, cool. That sounds kind of cool. I'll just figure out how to separate it. And so that Mexicans say it one way, the gringos say it another way.
Yeah, Pinedo.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I like it.
I kept it. Then it's funny because actually I didn't keep it that very moment. I let it sit. Then when I met a mutual friend, Billy, he started calling me Pinedo. I'm like, what the fuck? Okay. This is gonna stick.
Yeah, of course Billy would call you Pinedo, right?
Yeah.
Now, just for getting going here, you are, well, I met you through doing the other podcast. You also have another mutual friend is Danny.
Right.
Applesauce from
Danny Applesauce, Sick Ass Fool.
Sick Ass Fool podcast. How did you meet Danny?
Danny, I work with Danny.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They brought me on board over at Davis Lines as a graphic designer. And this guy just walks up from the back, all filled with paint, and I look at him, I'm like, man, that guy looks like an asshole. Straight up. And he's like, he doesn't talk to me or say anything, but he just walks in like frowning, like, what the fuck? And, later on I go back there and I'm like, hey, what's up? And I remember the first time I said what's up to him, he just looked at me like, what the fuck does this guy want, right? And I'm like, whatever. Then I think it was like maybe a few days later, I'm like, hey, how's it going? I guess he's seen me there for a few days. Probably thought, oh, he works here.
No.
So then he started saying what's up back, and we just started talking. He'd go in there and talk to the boss about different things, about painting, about how he started doing this, venting a little bit. And then he's like, I want to get into a podcast. Then he started talking smack about designers, and he's like, man, the guy that was here, I gave him a design to do for me. He hasn't done shit. So I'm like, dude, why don't you give it to me? I'll do it for you like within a week.
Yeah.
So he just looks at me like, this guy's full of shit. he gives me that. He has a weird look to him,
Mm-hmm.
which is like, I don't know how to read him, but he's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So he just gives me that look, and he doesn't say anything. And I'm like, cool, whatever. If you need it, I'm here. If you don't,
Okay.
whatever.
Nice.
Then later on, he comes back and he says, hey, I gave this girl my design. She was supposed to get it back to me, and it's been about a month. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Damn.
I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. So I'm like, so do you want me to work on it?
Mhm.
And then he goes, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Then he comes back later. He's like, man, that girl bailed on me.
Damn.
He's like, can you work on it? I'm like, go for it. So he sends it to me. I shoot it back to him like pretty quick. He's like, orale. So yeah, that's I haven't known him for that long, but he seems pretty cool, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty straightforward on everything.
Yeah. He's
Calls it like it is, kind of.
exactly. He's no bullshit sort of thing.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah, I tend to like people like that.
Yeah.
That don't give me bullshit.
The best
Straight
kind.
up. Yeah, yeah.
Now, I forgot to mention, you are a designer,
Graphic designer, illustrator.
and an illustrator.
Right.
Yeah. Now I think some people may have seen a lot of your work on through the Instagrams. You seem to for sure, I think seem running the same circles that you did Billy's illustration for his engagement, his family portrait.
Yeah, that was his Christmas present to his fiance at the time.
Nice.
So I did that for him. Then I've done other stuff for artists and just regular people. But Billy's was a little bit special because he's been like a person that's kind of been really there. He's mentored me through a lot of design.
Nice.
I think nowadays when I talk to my wife about design, I'm like, what would Billy do? So
nice. I like
we go back a bit.
Yeah, I love Billy. He's great. He's I met him too also at work, and he's helped me a lot along too. It's throwing me some jobs and things like that. He's a cool cat for sure. Yeah. Always, and I think this is one of the things that we're going to get into in a bit, as far as let's say the quote unquote business side of this thing. Because I think that, and I've mentioned this before with other people that are on here that do let's just say they do artwork for hire.
Right.
So there's this huge balance that you guys seem to do with art,
right,
and commercialism, to where you almost are at the mercy of someone's, for lack of a better term, for someone's ignorance. Correct. Like you draw something that'll be badass, and they're like, they don't see it, and it's like, man, and it's like, dude, what happened there? Sort of thing. I mean, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with clients like that?
It's funny. When I met Billy, I was working for a local company, and they had just brought him on, and by that, I was maybe there for like 3 years, and by that time, we were dealing with a lot of truck drivers, and they would come on, and they'd come over to the shop and say, hey, I need truck lettering. So it's hard. Well, it was kind of hard to please some of the truck drivers because they didn't know what the hell they wanted. They're like, we want something cool. We're like, all right, what the fuck are you into,
We all want something cool.
Right. But what is it? Cool is something different to everybody, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, I got to a point where I was doing all this truck lettering for truck drivers, and everybody came in with a different perspective on what cool was, right? And some of them thought cool was something that had a lot of detail in it, that was really flashy. Others thought that cool was something simple, minimalism. And then Billy came along, and I remember meeting Billy. And by that point, I was kind of like over it. I was like, truck drivers come in and tell me that, oh, that looks like shit.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, fuck, that's the coolest thing I've done.
Yeah.
And then Billy came in and he's like, that looks like shit. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I got to thinking, I'm like, what allows this guy to be able to, who has a bachelor's degree in design, come over and tell me that my work looks like shit, right? I mean, I could sell it to a mom and pop and they're like, oh, that's the greatest thing ever. But this fucker comes and tells me my work looks like shit.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started looking at his work, and his work was very minimalistic.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fucker, you didn't even think about that. You just fucking slapped it on. He came up with this one project called Black Door. That was part of the name. I'm not going to say the whole name, but it had to do with the black door, right? And he just makes a fucking door that's partially open, and he goes, there, black door. And I'm like, that took no thought. Everybody opens a fucking door every day. Mm-hmm. He's like, right. But everybody remembers they open the door every day. And I started thinking, well, kind of has a point.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the more I kind of hung out with them, I kind of disliked them.
Mm-hmm.
But then I thought, I got to dislike him for a reason. He probably has a point in all this shit. Okay. And I, as a designer, I would look at my own stuff and I would think, well, is it really all that great? You know, somebody's going to tell me it sucks regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's going to tell me it's shit. And am I okay with it? Then I thought, fuck, I took it from truck drivers. Truck drivers are, they're truck drivers.
Yeah.
Their opinion is kind of like a dime a dozen. They all have a different opinion, whatever. So I learned to just say, you know what? Fuck it. Everybody's going to have an opinion, regardless of what I do, what I design, what I say. Regardless of anything that happens, everybody's going to have an opinion. Just let it slide. Fuck it.
So you learned to not take it so personal?
Yeah, I don't take it personal. At the beginning, when I first got out of, when I was in college and high school, I would take it really personal. I was like, well, fuck, you don't know how to do this. Mm-hmm. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be able to please everybody at the same time.
Yeah.
So, fuck it. If you don't like it, like I told my followers, if you don't like my stuff or if you don't like my opinion, don't follow me. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Somebody else will.
Yeah, and it's a big it's a big shit show. Yeah, I think when it comes to trying to please everybody, sort of thing. So, but in your let's just say in your genre, mm-hmm. I think it's pretty difficult to it seems to be difficult to like, okay, well, I did this, right? And it's not like you can save it for somebody else a lot of the time unless it's in the same sort of business or something like that. It's like, if they don't like it, you almost just have to throw it away and go into the, you know what, fuck it. It's just a great piece of work, or I spent all this time on there and, it's for no one but me. I'm the only one that's going to be able to appreciate this. And that would seem to be a little frustrating, I think, at some point. No, or you also...
I think a little bit, mm-hmm. because there are times when I do things for, like, last December, I did a design for this one girl, and I thought it was pretty badass. Mm-hmm. I kind of put my all into it, and I thought, well, fuck, dude, you're putting your all into it, and what if she doesn't like it? That always plays in the back of my head. What if they don't like it? Yeah. And I thought, well, okay, fuck it. If she likes it, cool. If she doesn't, well, just fucking hold on to it. Well, she didn't like it. And she told me straight out, I don't like it. Can you start over? And I'm like, oh, fuck. I already spent like fucking 16 hours on this.
Damn.
And I'm like, okay, cool. Fuck it. I'm like, I'm going to charge you again because you didn't give me proper direction.
Yeah.
So she's like, all right, cool. But I want something else. I'm like, do you want something else or do you want me to start over or what do you want? She's like, yeah, just start over. I'm like, all right, fuck it. So I took that piece and I kind of changed it up a little bit. Mm-hmm. In Photoshop. I photoshopped it. Then I posted it. And I didn't get that many likes, but I was okay with it. Mm-hmm. Because I knew that behind the scenes I had put stuff in there. Right? There were times where I was thinking of certain things and I was like, fuck, okay, that's my That's my thing right there. And I got to do it again, a little bit different, but it has a little bit of personality that I put in it, but it's not mine. So I kind of it's there for everybody to see, but nobody knows why it's there.
Yeah.
So,
well, at least there's somewhat of an outlet for that. But I mean, it was just like, do you go into a job? When you feel someone out, do you go into a job going like, all right, I'm going to do 3 of these, or there's 3 potential works or projects that this person might like? Is there a point where you really think about like, okay, how much time am I really going to spend on this project for this person? Because you kind of like get the feel like maybe, at one point, is it like really business? Like, hey man, I can't spend this much time on this, because they probably, it's got to do with their budget too. But does that play a bigger part than it should, or than it does? Or do you got it dialed down right to where it's like,
I don't have it dialed on. I don't. I also don't estimate time. I'm like, you know what? Here's the price. That's what it is. I'll do it for you, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
As far as giving them options, I learned that when I give people options, they kind of come back and want to change shit left and right.
Okay.
Especially in logo design. And then that makes me work a little bit more. The one thing I learned with Bill, I'm going to bring Bill up a lot.
Okay.
Simply because I did learn a lot from him. But sometimes when customers come to you, they kind of don't know what they want. Okay. And my job is to show them a direction that might make their business better. And if I can't sell them a package, I'm going to give them a logo or a design. And if they can't carry it, they're going to fail. But that's their failure. That's not my failure. Because once I'm done with it, it's up to them completely.
Okay.
But going back to giving them options, I try not to do that much anymore, unless of course they're really paying well for it, and then it is worth the time. But most of the time I'll be like, I'll sit on it for a little bit, maybe a week or two, think about it, and then I'll present it to them. I'll tell them, this is what I see in your logo. This is kind of where I see you headed with it. Do you want to do that? And they'll either say yes or no. And then I'm okay, cool. Then I'm going to give you more options. But I'm not going to sell them to you as a package. I'm just going to give you a logo. You tell me if you like it, and you're done.
Okay.
So there's I try to distinguish them, the people that want their business to go further versus the people that just want a logo, a cool design for a shirt, or a design for, just for something. So, like, last year, no, not last year, a couple years ago, I presented an idea for a gym to a customer, and I sold him the whole package deal, right? He didn't want it.
Wow.
So I'm like, all right, cool. I thought the idea was pretty cool. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to wait for somebody else to come up, and somebody else who owns a gym to come to me, design something for them, and I'll sell it to them, see if they want to go with it. So it's kind of like recycling my ideas a little bit, but kind of not really. Yeah. I'm presenting them a direction. If they want to take it, like I said, it's cool. You guys could go that direction or just find your own way. Yeah. But that's what I kind of try to do. But I always try to lead them in a direction where they'll profit, where they'll be able to take their brand and just kind of like market it throughout in different ways and different commercial, different medias, just try to make the most with their brand. Yeah. And some people don't see it that way. Some people just say, oh, it's a logo. Boom. We're done. Yeah. Like, all right.
How often do you meet people that are really savvy at that and really appreciate what you do versus people who just like don't see it at all?
It's kind of 75-25.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people are just like, I don't know what I want. I'm like, just do your thing. I'm like, okay, cool. And some people are like really, really picky on what they want.
Mm-hmm.
But then they realize like towards the end of the project that really isn't what they want.
Okay. All
And
right.
I'm like, okay, so now do you want direction? I'll give you direction if that's what you need now.
Okay.
And sometimes they take it. Sometimes they say, no, it's not in my budget. I'm like, all right, cool.
Okay. Yeah, because that plays a role.
Yeah, that plays a big role.
One of the things that, bringing up Billy again,
Yeah.
the Billy podcast.
Yeah, this is the Billy B podcast.
Yeah, is that I understood, because this also comes into if and when I'm pitching something for a photography idea, or, you know, what kind of portrait somebody wants. Because
Right.
I don't do weddings.
Right.
Engagement pictures on the normal stuff isn't my thing. I look at all as portraiture, and I'm really more into capturing what it is that I make it stand out, or I want to make it to, in my opinion, the best portraits are the ones where someone who has no idea who that person is, but still wants to have it hanging on their wall.
Right.
That's, to me, those are like the best kind of portraits.
Right.
And so in order to get to that point, I need to get information from somebody.
Right.
I need to be able to, hey, what are your things? What do you like? This, that, and the other. And I got that from Billy, to where like I hear him when he starts pitching in this stuff, where he starts asking people what they want, what their budget is, this, that, and the other. He gets down to specifics, statistics, budget.
Right.
There's no room for error by the time somebody gets out of the room and goes, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Right.
What's your business plan? What's this? And then it's like, that's like what I took to in my approach to, where like, hey, what do you want? What's your vibe? What are we going for? Where do you want it? And it's just like, so at the end of the day, if you do all that work in the beginning of the project, it seems to, everyone's happier towards the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then it's nobody's fault but there.
Yeah,
I see it, you know. And of course, though, and it's definitely not trying to align myself to what you guys do on that level. Is that, yeah, there's a certain little bit of like, oh, I don't like the way I look in this picture, or I don't like this, that, and the other, as opposed to like working, I would assume sometimes a week or two on something where you're not.
You don't get the power of control Z.
Yeah. You know, I find it, I keep referring to, I love you guys' patience.
Right.
And I love your ability to keep producing work that it seems to me a lot of times people shit on because they don't understand. And it could be a Picasso in a sense. It could be the next Coca-Cola label. It could be the next, IBM, Playboy label, fucking look around. And they would not take it because they
want something different.
Yeah, they want something different, which I find ridiculous and funny. Yeah. But what, did you always an artistic, like drawing and stuff like that in the beginning? As a kid, you grew up drawing, or? Yeah.
I picked it up when I was really small. 4 or 5 years old, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Yeah. Reason I picked it up, it wasn't, I guess you could say it was a gift, but mostly it was because I was super hyper.
Okay.
So my parents they're like, you know what? Fuck it, let's give them crayons and a notebook and see what he could do.
Okay.
So that's how it all started. Mickey Mouse, Mighty Mouse. There's some people go further back. Don't know who Mighty Mouse is.
Yeah.
But cartoons, it's all I was into. But yeah, throughout growing up, you know, cartoons were my thing.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to replicate them or reproduce them or even come up with my own was always kind of important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because that was my only outlet from getting in trouble, at least for a certain point in my life. But you know, as in my teen years, I realized that having fun was a little bit more important.
Okay, yeah,
and I definitely put that on the side till, of course, I got back into high school. Then I realized I could make money off of it.
Okay,
because during high school, it was interesting. There was this movement back in the day called La Quebradita.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
The dance?
The dance.
Yeah.
It was a ranchero dance or banda dance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when that movement came, I'm from LA in case some listeners don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But once that movement came, there was a bunch of clubs out there, or not dance clubs. They would call groups of people would call themselves clubs versus gangs.
Oh, okay. All right.
So when these clubs started popping up everywhere, they would be like aficionados to different groups, banda groups. And I started making flyers for them because there was the need.
Okay.
So they'd hit me up. They're like, you know how to draw, right? I'm like, yeah. So they'd like, make us a flyer. I'm like, okay. So I realized that all these people throwing backyard parties needed flyers, and they'd hit me up, and I started making money off of simple little flyers.
Nice.
So that's kind of when I got back into illustrating, designing, and all that. Because I knew there was a profit in it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't big, but for me, it was what, money for candy, money for sodas, money for beer back in the day,
Yeah.
So I realized that there was money there. So I kind of stuck to it for a bit. Till I got out of high school. Then once I got out of high school, I kind of stopped again.
Okay.
And the reason I stopped was because I had to work.
You had to work, huh?
Yeah, my parents, if you're Mexican, well, most of the time, once you're out of high school, you got to get a job and,
Yeah.
for yourself, buddy.
Exactly.
So that's kind of what happened. And as I was working, I kind of gave up on that, put that off on the back burner again. I didn't draw or didn't do design for a while, till I met this one girl who is now my wife.
Oh.
And she kind of pushed me to go back to school and get a degree and, go back to what I love doing.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I ended up back in design, back into illustrating. So it's kind of like, it's been back and forth.
Yeah.
And even during my marriage, there have been years where I just don't produce anything.
Mm-hmm.
Then there are years where I've just been hammering it out.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of both, But that's pretty much how it came about.
But before you went to school for graphic design, but before then, had you studied art or illustration or drawing, sketching at all before that?
No, I didn't. Like I said, I used to trace, like all my superheroes, like Batman, Superman, all those.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think about, I didn't know, I guess is a proper word. I didn't know that there was a study for that.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know it was something you had to study. I figured all these guys in fact, one of the reasons why I didn't think you had to study was because my brother one time bought a big portrait of Picasso.
Okay.
And he hung it in our bedroom, and I looked at it and I'm like, the hell is that? And it was a drawing of a hand holding flowers. And I looked at it and he goes, that's a Picasso. And I'm like, okay, what's so special about it?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, well, it's a Picasso. Don't you know who Picasso is? I'm like, if that's a Picasso, I could do that.
Yeah.
And it turns out that when I was in high school, I did research Picasso. Picasso, when he was a younger kid, he was a bad motherfucker.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. So I wondered, why did this guy, Picasso, go from drawing something that was photorealistic to fucking line drawings?
Mm-hmm.
And it boggled me. I'm like, why? Why would you go backwards? It's like, wouldn't you want to go forwards and just do better things than just fucking little sketches like that? And I guess it dawned on me that he probably did study to do all that, unless it was a gift. But then he just decided not to. Because when I was in college, I remember my art teacher telling me, you're going to learn all the rules just so that later on you could break them.
Yeah.
And I figured, okay, that's why Picasso did that.
Mm-hmm.
He pretty much knew how to do everything, but he decided not to, which is complete rebel from what he was taught.
Yeah, he's got a quote saying that he basically took him a lifetime to learn how to draw like a child.
Yeah, which is weird.
Yeah. And
a lot like that. Benjamin Button movie.
Yeah,
Going
exactly.
backwards. Yeah.
And again, he was, a lot of people, this is exactly what I like to bring up every once in a while. Is like, yeah, there's talent in the beginning, but there is also a level of education that has to go involved too. And Picasso studied, and for the most part, he's regarded as one of the best, and arguably the best artist that up to this point. You look up, you can't talk about art, not talk about Picasso,
right?
Only because that guy worked on so many different mediums and in so many different genres, and he fucking killed in everything.
Yeah,
he was and it's not like a lot of times I wonder, like, is this piece of art worth something because it just carries the name, or is it because it's actually good? And a lot of the times I look at Picasso shit and I'm like, man, I look at Guernica and I'm like, dude, that's a fucking masterpiece. I love that shit. It's just like, I had that thing hanging on my wall, everything, and I looked at it every day. It was like, man, how do you think like that? And again, it's a lot of passion involved and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I'd wake up every day looking at that damn Picasso holding flowers, and I'm like, how the fuck is that worth anything?
Yeah.
How is that more valuable than anything I could do? I was, maybe 8 or 9 when I saw that drawing? Or I don't know if it's a drawing or a painting, or I don't know how he made it. But I'm like, how is that worth anything?
Yeah.
I remember my brother, that's worth millions of dollars. I'm like, I could do that.
Yeah. And the thing is like, yeah, a lot of people can do that too. And it's just like, well, and that's where the whole art thing comes into mind too, where it's like, I think that certain art is inflated to the point where, man, really Jackson Pollock is worth $500 million. But then I look at a Jackson Pollock and I'm like, yeah, if I had $500 million, I'd probably pay that for Jackson Pollock.
Yeah.
But it's a balance this way though, because now you're almost not buying things like Picasso's or Jackson Pollock's or Van Gogh's or Monet's, not just because you really, really appreciate art. It's because now it's just a great way to invest your money.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not really fair to everybody else, but yeah, it's, there. And so the formal training didn't really happen until later on in life, to where you went to school for graphic design and illustration, or just...
Yeah, I went to school for architecture.
Oh, okay.
So, for some reason I had it in my mind that I wanted to be an architect, simply because I had seen Frank Lloyd Wright's buildings.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this guy's a badass. I want to do that.
He made me want to be an architect too.
Right?
Yeah.
But then
falling water is a shit.
Oh yeah. Then I remember during my second year we got into building codes.
Okay.
And I'm like, fuck, I don't want to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
I don't want to know anything about this shit. This is not for me. I want to be able to create shit. Well, I dropped that. I don't want to do architecture anymore. I don't want to deal with building codes. I don't want to deal with materials. I just want to design a building, make it look cool, and done. During that time when I was taking architecture, I was big on comic books. So simultaneously, I was looking at all the drawings all the artists actually that were coming up during that time, which was about the mid 90s. So we had like Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane. We had Scott Campbell. I forget the rest, but I was looking at their artwork and all the details that they were putting into their artwork, and I think, fuck, these guys can make awesome buildings, but they could also make awesome drawings.
Yeah,
sequential art. I'm like, fuck, I want to do comics now. So I went from looking at comics but not really caring for them to saying I want to be an architect. Okay. Then after being an architect, wanting to be an architect, not being an architect, I said, fuck, I don't want to deal with all these fucking rules.
Okay.
I don't want to be an architect. Then I figured, fuck it, I'll just go into design. And what's interesting is that at that time when I wanted to go into design, the job I was working was I was a machine operator. I was running an embroidery machine for a local embroidery shop. And there was a designer there who was running an old Mac. I forgot I don't even remember what it was, to be honest with you. But that guy at that time was making about $15 an hour, and I was only making minimum wage.
Okay.
And I figured, fuck, that guy's making a good living. And nobody was doing a design on computers at that time. So I figured, fuck, maybe I could learn to do design on computers. So as I was studying design in college, it was like commercial design. I said, fuck this. I want to do design on computers.
Okay.
Just so I could do what that guy does.
Yeah.
So that's when that part of my life changed a little bit. It was still kind of like drawing, but now it's computerized.
Did you have experience with computers before then?
No.
Really?
Yeah, not at all. But I had worked that embroidery place for like 5 years maybe. When the designer, a female, she decided, well, she got pregnant and had to quit.
Okay.
She had to go on maternity leave. And I was moved up to that position from being a machine operator because during my breaks, I would just sit outside on the big lunch table and I'd draw. I'd sketch. And I would sketch my coworkers. I'd sketch the whole fucking warehouse where the machines were. And I didn't notice, but during that time, the boss would always walk in and out. And he'd always probably look at me drawing. And I guess one day he told the company manager, like, that guy knows how to draw. He's good with the paper and the pencil. Bring him in.
Okay.
So they moved me up from, I want to say, 1 week to the next,
Okay.
So that's when I figured, okay, fuck it. So if I could do this by hand, this girl's doing it by hand and on the computer, I can make myself more money here.
Yeah.
So I think it was more about money than what it was for design.
Okay.
And it kind of worked out for a bit. Simply because I was kind of stuck.
Okay.
I was stuck just doing what I was told all the time. Replicating designs that were already made. Nothing was mine. Nothing was creative. Nothing was original.
Okay.
It was all just replicating things that were already done. And then I had the opportunity to go from a design where I was just being repetitive, not creative, being pretty much a copy machine, to another job where I was able to create a little bit more. And that's when I realized that using software like Illustrator, Photoshop gave me that liberty, especially when I'm making page layouts and logo designs for magazines. So that kind of changed my perspective on where I wanted to be.
And again, it was just a big learning curve with that software to where you learn the software because of necessity, not because you were stoked about the software in the first place, right?
Right. Yeah, it was more of a necessity of me wanting to get higher up the ladder than what it was of just wanting to learn the software. I didn't care for the software.
Yeah.
It was based on money at the time.
So when you, during that time when you were doing basically working as a copy machine,
right?
Did your motivation kind of falter a little bit, or did you always know, hey man, this is just a stepping stone. I'm going to go ahead and make this happen. How did you just keep going? Because I can understand how you're like, fuck this is just bullshit. Yeah. But I think you found out that you were really good at something and that you wanted to keep going at it.
Well, actually what happened was I stopped.
Okay. All right.
I completely stopped doing anything at home. Like I said, there was many dry spells of creativity during my life. When I went from being a machine operator to a designer, copy machine, I didn't want to be creative simply because my everyday job was not being creative.
Okay.
I still loved watching movies, reading comic books and all that, but I figured, you know what, I don't want to be creative. I think I was wearing myself out, or burning myself out, just being repetitive. And I kind of didn't see myself creating anything important or anything that mattered, but just being a copy machine is how I saw myself. And I think that sunk in for a while, and I thought, well, fuck, what am I getting out of this?
Okay. Besides a paycheck?
Besides a paycheck.
Yeah.
And I guess, because I was doing like 3 things at a time.
Okay.
I was married. I was going to school, and I was working full time. So there was kind of no time for me to be creative, because while I was going to school, I was getting rid of my general education classes.
Okay.
That was after I dumped my architecture classes. I had given up on architecture. Said, "Fuck it, I don't want to do this."
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Okay, I'm gonna sit on it for a little bit and get rid of my general educations." I wasn't creative during that time. That was a good 2 years.
Wow.
Then, like I said, I was being a copy machine, not creative at all. Then I met this one guy in one of my classes. I didn't know he was into comic books, but apparently he was. He was an African American,
Mm-hmm.
and he'd have his drawings on his book. And I remember asking him, I'm like, "What's that for?" And he's like, "Oh, that's my story. The characters for my story." And I guess that's when it hit me. I'm like, "Well, fuck, what makes him so special?"
Yeah.
Why does he have a book?
Uh-huh.
And I started hanging out with them for a little bit. And he would tell me the stories of his characters. And I thought, well, fuck, I've been collecting comic books for all this time, which is about 5 years then. And I've been admiring the artwork. However, I haven't done nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to do about it? And I started creating my own characters. I figured if he could do it, why can't I? And like I said, I was on a dry spell. And when I picked up illustration again, it was different. It was different because I think for some reason, my what I call this, I picked up that as I analyzed all the comic books I was reading, I subconsciously picked up on movement that they were placing in the illustrations. So I learned on my own how to do sequential art and how to place characters in certain frames without doing it prior.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I just recorded in my head or
Mm-hmm.
what the hell happened, but I was making little stories here and there that to this day, I don't know where the hell they went.
But it's something that clicked at that
yeah,
particular
it just
moment.
clicked. I made my characters. I made my little sequential stories, and I was like, okay, cool. Now what?
Mm-hmm.
But I'd never done it before, and it just happened.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, cool. This is fun. I could be creative with this.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided to kind of put my general education classes on hold and go back into actual physical drawing. So I was taking my general education classes. I was taking some computer graphics classes, and I was doing regular drawing, freehand drawing,
Okay.
live drawing. In fact, I studied animation while I was studying web design, while I was studying motion graphics all at the same time.
Okay.
So I was always busy with something. There was really, now that I think about it, I really don't have rest.
Yeah.
I didn't have any rest during that time when I was working, going to school, married, doing my own little comic things. I don't remember resting now that I think about it.
Okay.
I don't remember having a vacation.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, when you started picking up on stuff and, like, that the motion within the frames, I guess
Right.
I'll call it for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, do you think it was because you were probably submerged and looking at much more comic books, but it looks like you were submerged in a bunch of other things as well.
Right.
And I think somehow all that ended up clicking at once, sort of thing.
Thanks.
Now, I'm curious as to, is there, in your opinion, a difference between illustration and art? Or can one be the other? Or is one separate from the other?
I think illustration and art. You mean like coexist, or?
Well, let me see. Why do you call it illustration as opposed to maybe artwork?
I think of it as, okay, if I'm using a pencil, it's illustration.
Okay.
I try to keep it simple. And once it's done, it's artwork.
Okay.
I don't know why I've always thought of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I know artwork could be many different things, but I guess when I was studying how to make a comic book, it went from illustration to a final piece of art during a process of penciling, inking, coloring, and adding copy.
Mm-hmm.
Then it became a piece of art because first it was just an illustration. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Because even nowadays where you're looking at just illustrations, pencil drawings, even with inks, they're art. And they sell for a lot of money. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a good question. I never thought of it that way.
Okay.
But
do you, so it seems like you're heavily influenced by comics.
Right.
Comic books.
Right.
Well, first question is, did you ever get also into anime, the Japanese versions of things like that? Or is that not?
No.
No?
Well, actually, I didn't, but my kids did.
Okay.
I hated anime.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why I hated it, but I looked at it, I'm like, well, fuck, that looks like fucking Picasso shit, where it's just like lines going here and there. In fact, even growing up as a kid, I remember watching Robotech. Do you remember Robotech?
Oh, that's what got me in the anime.
Right?
Yeah.
So I remember watching Robotech, and I was like, I don't see the point of that.
Oh, man, yeah. That thing changed my life.
Right?
Yeah.
I was watching He-Man, Thundercats, and all that. But anyway, my kids, when I had my oldest, he was into Yu-Gi-Oh! Those little Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards that came out maybe in early 2000s.
Uh-huh.
He got into that. And then when my other kid was born, he got into Pokemon. And all that's anime. And they often told me, Dad, draw me an anime. Draw me an anime.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, fuck no, I hate anime. I hate anime. And this was way before social media. Then for some reason, they just kept on bugging me throughout the years.
Okay.
Maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, one of my kids asked me, why don't you draw me an anime? I'm like, fuck, all right, fine. They've been asking me for this long, so I did it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I drew them an anime. They're like, oh, that's pretty cool. I'm like, what the fuck?
Nice.
I don't know. Then they kept on asking me, hey, why don't you draw me this in anime?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, all right, cool. I'll draw them that. And that's when I think Instagram started getting popular.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, I was going through a dark time in my life with my wife, with my kids, but I was trying to keep it together.
Okay.
And I remember I listened to this radio show every morning at that time. Oh, I still do, but from then till now, I've been listening to that radio show every morning. And one of the DJs on there, or personalities, he's not a DJ, I don't play music. One of the personalities on there, he kind of put up a challenge. He's like, if you follow me, I'll follow you back. I'm like, well, shit. Okay. So a bunch of people are going to ask to be followed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, what's going to make me different? You know, why am I different from all those followers? And I thought about my kids, and I'm like, what if I draw them in anime? And I did. But I remember I sent him a message, and I'm like, this fucker's not going to reply. Okay. He had like 500,000 followers at the time. I'm like, this fucker's not going to reply. And I'm like, hey, will you follow me if I draw you? And he says, okay, let's see if that's true, if you're really going to draw me. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, but don't follow me until I draw you. After I draw you, you follow me and I'll follow. Well, I'm already following you.
Yeah.
So, I took that weekend and I drew him in anime style and I sent it to him. I was kind of new to Instagram and, he liked it and he reposted it. And after he reposted it, I started getting a bunch of followers myself and I started getting requests for that anime style drawing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck? I did not expect that to happen. And it was in a style that I kind of was really, really new to, that I had not done I had done maybe about 5 times prior. And I didn't really have a feel for it. So I started getting requests from people everywhere. You know, I want to draw me and my kids, me and my wife, me and my girlfriend, draw my girlfriend. I'm trying to impress her. I'm like, holy shit.
Wow.
So I'm kind of back where I was in high school where I had all these kind of clubs asking me for flyers. and making money off of it, I'm like, well, shit, maybe I hit something here that I wasn't expecting. And that kind of brought me out of that place where I was. Like I said, I was going through a dark time in my marriage and in my life, and that kind of brought something back.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I had stopped drawing for a while. But anime,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I've learned to have a respect for it because it's not really my style.
Yeah.
But it's what I've done by mistake, I guess, or by accident, or I don't know what to call it, but that's how I fell there.
You fell into it? I
fell into it.
So would you consider the drawings that you have up on your Instagram now more anime style than your vibe, or?
Well, I don't even know if they're anime, to be honest.
Yeah.
I know they're a mixture of my vibe with anime, but I know they're not either or. Because I do want to keep it on the anime side.
Okay.
Simply because that's where I've been headed for these past 3 or 4 years, but I'm not in anime.
Yeah.
You could ask me, have you watched this or have you watched that? And I'm like, I have no clue what that is, bro.
Okay. Yeah.
Robotech, I remember because, back in the days, I know some of the Studio Ghibli movies that my daughter makes me watch with her.
Okay.
They're pretty cool, but they're a little bit different from what I draw.
Artistically, they don't really grab you or speak to you or anything like that.
The movies?
Uh-huh.
The character development of the movies really grabs me.
Mm-hmm.
I really like how they take the time to bring you into the character's life and show you their everyday life, which is kind of like what we have ourselves as real people.
Yeah.
But they show it to you in a cartoon way, which kind of makes, at least for me, it makes me reflect on my life and think, well, fuck, do I do that when I eat cup of noodles? But I kind of, I think back and I'm like, okay, well, if I make a comic book again, do I want it to be anime, or do I want to go back into to the style where I used to admire these artists like Jim Lee again, Mark Silvestri, Michael Turner, all those, which is a whole lot more detailed artwork versus simple lines, which is like Picasso.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just boggles me a bit.
Well, I was actually going to ask you in a second, after all this influence by comic books and stuff, did you end up making your own comic book? Did you end up making your own characters and your own storylines? Or working on something? I
have my characters. My storyline, I just can't.
No.
In fact, those characters are honestly, those are on a back burner.
Okay.
Like really, really far back. I haven't brought them out back to life since, or I haven't even seen them. Actually, I did see them this past week. I found a little copy that I had written a bunch of notes on in one of my old sketchbooks. I was cleaning up this past weekend and I found like that copy paper, and it had all my characters on them. And I'm like, fuck, I remember these guys. They're like 20 years old.
Wow, that's a long time.
And I'm like, man, I haven't touched these guys since then. But what I did do was I created another character, which is kind of, I call him the Little Pinedo.
Okay.
He's kind of a smartass, kind of like my alter ego. He's kind of like me, but I kind of don't present myself that way, or I try not to. I know I do come off like an asshole sometimes, but this guy is kind of like, he's a smartass in a stupid way. Okay. And I made him this way because I want him to be able I want to be able to tie him in with different areas such as politics, religion, film. Okay. Anything. I can put him anywhere and it'll clown on the situation.
Almost like a Cantinflas guy.
Kind of, yes.
Yeah.
But a little bit more Americanized, of course. Yeah. I was going to make him a comic book, but now that I've gotten into After Effects and into Premiere, and I found a really cool app called Adobe Character. And what that does is that makes your character move.
Okay.
Because I had the idea of getting my nephew to make him in 3D in Maya and making movies out of him like that. But then I thought, well, that's going to lose the old comic style from it.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of want him to be 3D. But I kind of want everything.
Yeah.
But with this Adobe character software, I can draw him out and scan him, bring him into Photoshop or Illustrator and make him move. Kind of just like a regular traditional cartoon.
Okay.
I'm like, well, shit, that's pretty cool. I've always been into cartoons.
Fucking technology, huh?
Right? Yeah, and I don't have to do all that frame animation.
Yeah.
So that would save me a lot of work, a lot of time.
Would you be opposed to if someone like I don't know how comic books really work, but I don't think Stan Lee wrote or drew all of them. He came up with the stories, right? And then somebody else drew them,
right?
Would you be opposed to like if somebody came up with a cool story and goes, "Here, Pinedo, draw it," sort of thing? Is that something that you'd be interested in if you really like the story? Or
I've been approached with things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. I was approached a couple of times. Actually, more than a couple times. Mm. And I think when people approach you, I don't realize they know how much time goes into an illustration.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot different writing a story versus illustrating it,
mm-hmm.
just as it is of making a movie and doing an illustration. And they think, okay, here's my story. I'm done with it. It's all on you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're like, well, shit, that's going to take me about a year to finish.
Yeah.
You know, I've been approached, like I said, multiple times. They're like, okay, what about these characters? Do you know what they look like? They'll be like, no, that's your job. I'm like, well, not really.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of is, but it really isn't.
You're there to finalize it.
Yeah. Right? I got to fine tune them. They're like, well, this is what this is what they're supposed to look like. I'm like, okay, cool. But once with one guy, I started working with him till he kind of pissed me off.
Okay.
And I'm like, you know what, bro, this isn't going to work. Because I was giving him sketches back and forth he had maybe about 10 characters. And I would sketch something up for him, shoot it to him. He'd say, oh, that's cool, but that's not my character. I'm like, well, shit, why don't you send me your character if you already have them?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, because I want you to come up with them, but that's not what I'm visualizing. I'm like, okay. So I'd shoot him another sketch and he'd come back with the same shit. So again, I did it on multiple characters for him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? This isn't going to work. You know, we still haven't even gotten into illustrating or giving you samples of the settings, the placement, or any locations as to where the story takes place. And, you know, with the characters, we're already having a hard time. And I stopped it before I spent more time on it.
Yeah.
Because I knew that once we get into the sequential art, it was gonna be hell.
Yeah.
And I didn't think it was worth my time to do that.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to what you were saying in the beginning. A lot of these people don't know what they want.
Right.
They approach it like, I know what I don't want.
Right.
And that's not fair to anyone.
No, yeah, that's definitely not fair. That wasn't fair to me.
Yeah.
Knowing that they had already finished the story, now I just got to put everything else together. It's like, you're done. Now you're going to sit and wait for me to finish it.
Yeah.
It's like if it was a team effort, or if, you know, not to bring money into it, because I know a lot of people do things for passion, not for money.
Yeah.
But bills don't pay themselves.
Yes.
Right. I'm a freelancer, but my work isn't free.
Right. Exposure don't pay the bills or
right.
whatever. Yeah.
Unless you're like fucking, you know, somebody really famous.
Mm-hmm. And
of course they'll give you all that exposure and the work comes in, which has happened. But Joe Schmo comes in with the script or with the story and wants you to draw it out, and you're going to have this big hit and he has no connects or nothing.
Yeah.
Then what do you do? You know, you're kind of just spinning your wheels,
mm-hmm.
tossing out your ideas, and it's kind of for nothing. You know, it might be something successful like the Ninja Turtles, but it's a chance you kind of got to take. But personally, I decided not to take on projects like that.
Yeah.
Unless I know it's somebody that's gonna give me a return on my investment,
Yeah.
on my time.
Okay.
And I've had a couple that do want to give me a return on my time, and they do have the exposure. But again, they're busy and I'm busy, and so we're just kind of sitting on it.
So, I mean, it would really just take somebody with already at a budget to basically try to hire you full time to go, hey, this is what I want to do, and be ironclad with the ideas and be able to compensate you properly for your time in order to dive deep into that.
Correct.
I didn't know so many people just came at you like, hey, draw this for me. You know?
Dude, people come at me with the weirdest things. Girls, females, we're in a time where people feel privileged. I think that based on looks, people think that they deserve things. And I've gotten messages where they're like, hey, from females, of course, saying, hey, can you draw me? I'm like, sure, here's my rate. Oh, well, then I get a tit pic. I'm like, what does that do?
Yeah.
I'm going to spend 5-6 hours and I just saw your tits.
Yeah.
What is that going to do for me?
Is that what you want drawn for my rate?
It doesn't add up. And I think that nowadays we've gotten to a time where it's really stupid.
Yeah.
Like I said, everybody thinks because they have a presence on social media, because they have a certain following, because they know somebody else's cousin, they are privileged and they deserve, or they're owed something.
Everybody's an influencer now, quote unquote, right?
Everybody's an influencer.
That's terrible.
That's really bad.
And it's one of these things where like, hey man, if you can't tip, don't go out to dinner.
Yeah.
It's just, I find that very fascinating, to say the least.
It's kind of offensive too. I mean,
oh yeah, right.
It's offensive and degrading, I think. You have nice tits, but you're kind of lowering your standards for a drawing.
Yeah, and you kind of want to go back and like, hey, well, nice tits, but they're not worth my art,
right?
And then you throw it back on them, and then they're like, well, fuck you. This is whatever.
Right.
Fuck you and your art. Sort of thing.
You're not even that good anyway.
Right. Exactly. Well, then why the fuck you ask me that?
Right.
Sort of thing.
Yeah. I'm sure you get that a lot too as a photographer, right?
And unfortunately, it happens almost every day.
Yeah.
And it's just you know what's funny? It's I get it from actually girls and guys.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I get it to like, I'm going to be a model
soon.
And I'm like, okay, well, until then, this is my rates. And they go, well, I'll get you all this exposure. And it happened a lot more when I was starting out.
Yeah. When I first, like I said, when this guy reposted my illustration of him, I was getting people saying, hey, I know this person here. I know that person there. I know Snoop. There was this one girl that hit me up saying, hey, why don't you draw Snoop for me? I know him. I'm like, really? Where do you live? She's like, I live in Long Beach. I don't know where Snoop lives.
Well, he's from Long Beach. But I'm sure he don't live there anymore.
Right. I'm sure he doesn't. And then she's like, my daughter goes to school with his daughter. I'm like, does she go to private school? I'm sure his kids go to private school, right?
Yeah.
She says, no, she goes to school over here in Long Beach. I don't know the area, right? I'm from LA, but I haven't been there. I haven't lived there in a while. I don't know how much of this is true, but I wasn't going to take the time to draw Snoop for her.
Yeah.
When I had other work. It would have been great exposure. I mean, I could do it now. I don't mind doing it now. It's actually something I want to do.
Yeah.
But, when you're starting, everybody just wants to take advantage of you. And you learn the hard way how to pick those people out.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's the hard way.
Yeah.
What about just fucking doing Snoop and then sending it to him direct and fucking bypass the middle person,
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
One thing I was really fortunate. I'm big on USC. I kind of became a stalker.
Oh, yeah?
So I found a way around the whole system of I can't get to Snoop, but I'm going to get to somebody else who knows Snoop.
Yeah.
And being into the UFC, I got to meet a few fighters that way.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know them, but I came around the back end.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And my artwork did get to them, and I did get to meet them.
Nice.
I was privileged to have lunch with one of them here in Scottsdale.
Oh.
And I was like, what? I remember I messaged her husband. I'm like, hey, check it out. Here's I drew your wife. He's like, oh, cool. I'll give it to her. So she reposts it.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, oh, cool. Then I drew her like 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And then one time I saw her post that she was riding bikes here in Phoenix. And I'm like, hey, are you guys in Phoenix? I know if I send her a message, she's not going to know who the hell I am.
Yeah.
Right. She's not going to see it. She's got fucking 500,000 followers.
Okay.
So I sent him a message. I'm like, hey, are you guys in Phoenix? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, you guys want to have lunch? And, you know, I'm always expecting to get shot down regardless of what I do. And he's like, yeah, go for it. I'm like, no shit. He's like, yeah, let's have lunch.
Oh, wow.
I'm like,
hell yeah.
Okay. And, you know, it worked out. I was able to hang out with them for a few hours, chit chat. Really nice people. But, you know, like I said, there's always means of getting to somebody that you admire,
Mm-hmm.
and being known by them.
Yeah.
And I think you and I have the advantage of, I don't want to say normal people, but people in general, because we have something different to offer than just saying, hey, I'm your follower.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of have a trade where we can lend them that will also benefit us in the long run.
Yeah. There's, you know, it goes back to, you know, some people don't want to have a special thing that they do.
Right.
A lot. And that's one of the things that I want to kind of bring up with this podcast is like, you know what? I don't think you have to be a photographer, you have to be an illustrator, graphic designer, but you have to do something.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're going to be the best at something,
Right.
have a passion for it and get off your ass and do it, sort of thing.
Yeah, I know I'm not the best.
Yeah.
Even on my posts, I get people talking smack about, hey, it doesn't look like her. I'm like,
whatever.
I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Then I go back to their profile. I'm like, okay, what do you do?
Yeah, exactly.
Selfie.
Exactly. It's like, dude, yeah, keep your mouth shut, sort of thing.
Right.
What did you think about this last Conor McGregor Cerrone fight? Did you watch that one?
I watched that one and I was disappointed. I was disappointed because it didn't seem like if that was Cerrone. That was a different person to me personally. It seemed like, yeah, that was the same old McGregor, whatever, I'm gonna win. But that did not seem like Cerrone. I thought he was just there to make a check.
Yeah, I've heard that too. And for what I'm following from Cerrone is it didn't seem like he was ever that kind of guy.
Yeah.
And
that's what gets me.
I thought that he had a lot to lose by losing this fight because I think it was his last shot at probably getting a belt somewhere. If he beats the shit out of McGregor, I think he gets a legitimate chance of winning a belt somewhere. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, finally being champion.
Yeah.
After fucking record-breaking fights and wins that he has.
Right.
But what I take from it, too, is that he needs to stop. I think he's punch drunk. And
true.
And I love the guy. I've been following that guy forever.
Right.
And he's just like, hey, man. And again, I don't like McGregor, but I know he's a monster. I know he's a great fighter. And he caught fucking, I always keep thinking like he caught him with a punch that maybe a younger Cerrone would have been able to take.
Right.
And that's what really puts me into like this perspective of like, I'm all for limited fights in professional fighting.
Right.
I love boxing. I like UFC. But I think 40 fights is enough. I think that's it. And if you didn't make it in 40 fights
to the head are enough.
Yeah, there's 40 professional fights are enough. I mean, you look at you can look at somebody who like Julio Cesar Chavez.
Oh yeah,
senior. You know,
80,
not junior.
80 plus fights.
Yeah, and 100 something, right?
Right, was it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's got pretty close to 100 fights or somewhere over, where the guy was fighting basically every month at one point.
Right.
And, but everyone knows that he had a hard head. That's what they talk about. And you look at him now and he's still there. He's not, in the sport where I look at, Muhammad Ali, who's arguably the greatest of all time, he says so himself, but a lot of people say that as well, is that the guy who's considered the best at something went out with brain damage. And that's got a lot to say with how many punches he took to the head, whether the Parkinson's and the Alzheimer's were directly related to that. No one has any definite proof, but the shit sure didn't help.
Right.
So, so I'm like, you know what? And you see a lot of people there's one too many bad retirements going in, to where it's like, you see them later on in life. I mean, and they're just like, they're gone. They're not, and let alone some of them die, and it's just like, God damn.
I was watching the Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah.
Yeah, about how all that trauma to the head from football just fucks up their brain.
Yeah.
And thinking being in boxing or being in MMA, I mean, kicks to the head, jabs to the head. I was thinking about it, I'm like, fuck, just getting a jab to my face, having my head hit back. It's like, oh, shit. Now try doing that like 50 times.
Yeah.
What is that going to do to me? And what does that do to them?
And those are jabs.
Yeah, those are jabs. Those are not hard punches.
Yeah. Once you got your power punches in.
Yeah, that's
and then when you hit the mat.
Yeah, so that's like a double hit.
Yeah. And it's an issue to where I'm like, hey man, I'm all about martial arts. It's a form of art to me,
Yeah,
I love it, and I love fighting, and I love that stuff. And as barbaric as some of it may seem, there's still a situation where we need to, hey man, enough is enough.
Yeah,
and keep people from coming back. Like, I love George Foreman, but if it was my world, I would have never allowed him to come back.
No, yeah, he came back for one fight and that was it, right?
Yeah, no, he came back for a few and won his championship again. Yeah, he did, after being an old man.
Was that when he was champion, when he was real old?
Yeah.
Well, not real old, but he was older.
Yeah, so he had his career as a young man, retired, and then came back,
made champ, right?
And then became a champion again. Yeah. And it was and you look at George Foreman, and he seems to be all there, sort of, stuff. But, I mean, sometimes I listen to Roy Jones Jr. talk, and I'm like, Roy, hold on, man. I don't understand everything that he says all the time, but,
say it again.
One more time. And it's just like, and, I just like, dude, and when I see that Cerrone thing happening again, I'm like, that guy needs to stop fighting.
Yeah, yeah.
He put up some great fights, but he needs to stop fighting. And again, after that many fights, you're going to tell me that you don't have some sort of brain damage?
Yeah. Not only that, but I mean, think about it. I think it was set up, because if you want to make money off of a name at least, and I think if McGregor would have lost that fight, if he would have gotten the Cerrone that was the real fighter, I mean, how are you going to make money off of McGregor? He lost 3 fights in a row, right? Diaz, Khabib, and Cerrone.
If he would have lost.
If he would have lost.
Yeah.
3 fights in a row. What does that do to his career, to his name? I mean, does that make him just like as a kind of like a one-hit wonder in the UFC? Now he's a Ronda Rousey again?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does nothing. But if he came back from a loss, won again, I mean, you got the name. He could make a ton of money off of that.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, too, the question is, does Cerrone deserve a rematch? Just on his record, the answer is yes.
Right.
But again, I don't want to see it.
I don't want to see it.
I can't. and
it's like saying Canelo Triple G again, right?
Yeah, he's exactly right. I mean, I don't
see that.
I don't want to see that either. I mean, as much as, and here's my thing with that one too. It's that I'm a huge Canelo fan,
All right.
but I had him losing the first fight by 5 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
And then come the second round or the second fight, I could see the argument for a draw.
Right.
And again, I'm coming from my man Canelo. And don't get me wrong, I love Triple G too.
Right.
But even on that second fight, I had Canelo down by 2 rounds. And I'm a pretty good, I think I'm a pretty good scorer when it comes to boxing. It's rare that I get it completely wrong. And,
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at it. So when Canelo in the second fight, I'm like, okay, well, because I can see some rounds going either way. I could have saw it. I understood it more. I wish that one was more of a draw, but
yeah, I definitely see that one.
Even that way, though, I mean, I saw Triple G's last fight, and he looks old.
He looks tired.
Yeah, and it's like, dude, if there was a third fight, I would hate to see Triple G just get obliterated.
Yeah,
because he struggled with a guy that was nowhere near Canelo's caliber, and he punched him. He knocked him down in the first or second round, maybe even the third round, and then he couldn't finish him.
Oh shit!
And then the guy came back and ended up. He didn't win the fight, but he ended up making it real close to. I'm like, that's
he's done.
Yeah, there's Canelo would have tore him apart.
Yeah,
and where Canelo's fighting right now, man, it's just crazy.
How did you feel about the was it Joshua and Andy fight? The last one.
The last one.
Yeah.
I felt bad about it because
why? Which reason?
Because the Mexican guy got the shit kicked out of him. And he came in ill prepared. He came in, I don't see... he just, you can talk about and speculate like, hey, you know what, the fame went to his head, everything went to his head, he wasn't prepared, he was fat. But you know what, at the same time, not to take away anything from Joshua. Joshua, right?
Yeah. Joshua.
He came in ready to fight.
Right.
He was determined not to duplicate what he had done in the first fight. So,
but going back to the first fight, I mean, looking at it, do you think it was a way or means of getting the Hispanic crowd to invest money into another pay-per-view?
What do you mean, like the immediate rematch, or?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean,
right.
First of all, I mean, I think that I think it would even invest the British crowd from investing in another pay-per-view because they want to see their boy, who was supposed to easily win,
right,
get the shit kicked out of him by a fat Mexican guy. And so I think that they definitely wanted a rematch, and I think they definitely wanted to see what happened in the second fight.
Yeah, but then the second fight was mostly a marathon, from what I saw.
A what?
Marathon for Joshua, where he just hit and run, hit and run. I mean, that really to me wasn't a fight. Well,
I have like I have my
I know it's hard to get in there, and I know it's hard for somebody to say that says you're not a boxer. You don't know what it takes to be in there.
Yeah, I mean...
But from a spectator point of view and from marketing point of view, it's like, okay, now are we going to have a third one? Because he beat him in the first one.
Oh, I don't think you see a third one.
You don't think...
No.
I think there might be a third
one. It wouldn't be right away. Anthony Joshua's going to...
Joshua?
No. Fucking... The Mexican... Antonio or Anthony. What's his name?
Yeah. Anthony Garcia.
Anthony
Garcia. Was it Garcia? No. I forgot his name.
But he's going to have to work his way up.
Oh, okay.
To get another title fight. So he's going to need 2 or 3 more fights before he can get back up there, because he's not...
he's not ready for that weight? Or?
He got beat. I mean, for being a champion...
Right.
He got destroyed. I mean...
But wasn't he playing like the Mayweather card? Joshua that's one thing I hated about Mayweather. It's like he'd hit, then he'd run. Then everybody says, well, his strategy is that he's going to wear him out by having them chase him. Then in the later rounds, he's going to take him out. But when I saw him fight like Canelo, it's like, okay, Canelo kept on chasing him. And he really didn't do much. And that's one of the losses Canelo has, that he's like, well, I want to redo that fight because, he really wants to fight. He doesn't want to be chasing him.
Well, why though? First of all, I love Floyd Mayweather and I love his boxing style. He's a champion.
He's defensive, right?
You got to come to him.
Right.
And Floyd Mayweather didn't always fight that way. But he ended up coming up with a style that, as a champion, you got to come to him.
Yeah.
And Maidana probably came closest to really rocking him and hurting him. Manny Pacquiao didn't do shit.
No.
And again, there's another guy who's fighting too much.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. But when Floyd Mayweather fights, I don't see him running as much as everybody wants to. I mean, he sits there and he'll hit you, right, and he'll come back and he'll do what he needs to do. But yeah,
then he'll step back and have you go after
right.
him.
But it's not his fault that the other people gas out by the time it's round 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and that's when he does his thing. And I love it. I think he brought boxing to a science to where he can't be beaten by
it's
someone.
Genius. I'll give him that. It's pretty genius. But I mean, for me, I think I want to see a brawl.
Yeah, I mean, and
that's different.
And there's certainly that, but I mean, you can see brawls like Hatton and Mickey. Those two fucking, is it Hatton or God damn it, they had the trilogy or 4 fights, and they beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
And I fucking put myself on the spot. The names, I forget the names, but it was these 2 white dudes going at it, and they bap, and they won. They went 1 fight, 2 fights, and it was just a brawl. But those 2 guys are terrible fighters. I mean, they're not terrible. I don't like to say that about boxers, about being terrible fighters, because, it takes a lot of balls and training to get into the boxing ring.
It does.
But they weren't never elite caliber fighters.
Right.
To the point where they were beating anybody that was worth a shit. And, the minute one of them fought Oscar De La Hoya, bam, put away. When they fought, Floyd Mayweather back in the day, bam, knocked the fuck out. Yeah. So, it's, again, they say style makes fights sort of thing, but, and it's just like, so if you want to see a brawl, you get like, I don't see Joshua getting into another brawl ever again in his life.
No, I don't.
Because he knows he can't.
Yeah.
And I mean, if that guy who was, and the
little fat guy.
Yeah, the little fat guy. He's got fast hands, and of course he's got power.
He's got power.
But he's gonna need to get more disciplined if he wants another crack at that belt. And right now, there's always those in the heavyweight division. There's always these 3 or 4 guys. Right now, it is a Wilder, Tyson Fury. I don't know if they fought or they're fighting here soon. And Joshua, and I think I'm missing another cat or 2 who are always in the thing with the fights, and I'm like, okay, whatever. So, but yeah, man, I don't see. And Canelo is right now. That guy is the boxer in the world right now.
Yeah, definitely.
And I just love the fact that he went up to light heavyweight and beat the shit out of somebody.
Right. He's very smart for what he does. I mean, boxing is a lot of mental thing.
Yeah.
Where you got to know where to hit and how hard to hit. But he's very smart at that. He knows how to take a punch, and he knows where to hit it.
I think and personally, I think he learned a lot from his Floyd Mayweather fight.
Yeah.
I think that's his only loss, or his only recent loss.
One of his most recent losses.
Yeah, and he's just crazy at it. And again, Manny Pacquiao is the guy. I don't know if you remember when he fought that cat in Australia, and he got robbed. I mean, was
it recent or
it
Marcus?
Was
it Marcus when he got knocked out?
Well, it was after Marcus.
Oh yeah, after Marcus, he just disappeared, didn't he?
No, well, he keeps fighting, but he ended up fighting this guy, and I think he obviously keeps fighting for the money.
Right.
His last fight, he says he didn't. His last fight, he didn't really say or not whether it was going to be his last fight. A lot of people were contemplating or speculating that it was probably going to be his last fight, but
he had said that before.
Yeah. So. But a couple years ago, or maybe, it was about close to a couple years ago, he fought this cat in Australia and destroyed him to where it was obvious. But he didn't knock him out.
Okay.
And 2, he allowed the guy to stay in the fight. Okay. So he's fighting the Australian guy in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So come decision time, he loses.
Pacquiao loses?
Yes, he loses to a decision, and everyone boos. Everyone says this is the worst thing that's happened. It is crazy. And I sit there and I'm like, Pacquiao was up by 5 rounds. If anything, if you're going to fuck him out of something, you could have said it was a draw. But he straight up lost. Now, in my mind, is like, okay, that shit happens every once in a while in boxing.
Yeah.
But a younger Pacquiao would have knocked that guy out.
Yeah.
And it's just a testament to how old he's getting, to where he needs to put him up.
Yeah, he does.
And I hate that, because it's like a Pacquiao on his prime would have knocked that guy the fuck out. That guy has no business fighting Pacquiao in his prime. And now where Pacquiao is still a decent boxer, good boxer, he's struggling with this guy to put him out, and because he couldn't knock him out, he loses a fight, and it's just terrible. So
I think that's one thing I loved about the UFC is, like, if you don't knock somebody out, you're gonna go to a draw and you lose a fight right away.
Yeah,
and I know that's the same in boxing, but I just felt that, it was happening too much in boxing, where it was like, okay, this guy should have won because he's got more experience. I gave up on boxing.
Yeah, it's and now is UFC? Do you draw from UFC as far as motivation, inspiration? I know you drew the one UFC fighter.
Yeah, I drew.
But you really is that?
I pretty much draw from whatever pulls me or whatever inspires me at that moment or at that time. Last year I wasn't all that much into UFC.
Okay.
As I was the previous years. But I kind of want to get back into it. Simply, but in a different style. I wanna do different styles now, not just that anime style. Simply because I think I miss the way I used to draw.
Okay. With
all the detail and everything. Being simplistic in design and everything is cool, but I miss putting in all the detail, putting in all the work.
Yeah.
As some would say, they both take different amount of work. One is thinking of how I'm going to do it, simplify it, and the other one's just putting all the detail in it. It kind of goes both ways. But yeah, I kind of want to go back to my old style in a little bit different way, which was a little bit more of the American comic style.
Okay.
Yeah. Not that anime style, but it's hard because I've tried a couple times to go back to that, and it kind of hasn't worked out, maybe because I'm so used to this new style.
Oh.
But like I said, this year my purpose is to go back that way. And I don't know how it's going to affect my anime.
Okay.
But, I guess I'm willing to take a chance. I'm not going to learn anything if I don't take a chance and go back to that, or even mix the two.
Yeah.
But like I said, this anime style is not really even anime. It's just something happened. I don't know what happened, but it happened.
It's anime inspired.
Anime, yeah.
Do you see that? Does that affect your commercial work at all, or do you do a good job of separating your commercial work from your personal work?
Yeah, that's completely separate. I try to. Actually, I do. I can say I separate. They're two completely separate things.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever I do in design is not affected by anything I do in illustration. When it comes, I've had a couple of people say, "Hey, we wanna hire you for design." Okay, I'm like, okay. Which side?
Okay.
You want illustration or you want design? They're like, yeah, we want design, and they're like full-time employers. I'm like, all right, cool. And once we get to talk, this one cat says, okay, cool. So you're going to be designing this and that, and you could incorporate your illustrations into this. And I had to tell this guy, I can't. I'm not going to incorporate that into this.
Really?
And
okay.
He's like, well, why not? I'm going to hire you, so whatever you could do, you could incorporate into my company and doing your style into my company. I'm like, I can't do that. And he's like, well, why not? I'm like, well, because that's my style. That's not your company style. And he felt offended that I wouldn't give him like all my 100%, including that part of my style, I guess, or my business. And it, I was okay with it. He says, okay, cool. Then we'll keep you in mind. I'm like, well, okay. Did you want me for design or did you want me for illustration? Which did you want? Because from the get-go, from when that started coming up, that style started coming up, I said, you know what? This is going to be completely different from design. Because I know that somebody's going to want to say, hey, you worked for me all this time doing that style of design, so that style is already mine.
Yeah.
Right? We kind of own that.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, no, I don't want to incorporate that with you. That is not to be selfish, but I think that's something that I want to leave for my kids, for myself. It's not something to go into a company to say, okay, we got this style because it's ours now. Because you were here. We don't need you anymore. We know how you do it. We're going to do it.
Gotcha.
So I tell people, like that guy told him straight out, I'm like, that's not coming.
Okay.
So if you want to hire me, cool. I'll do something different, but I'm not going to do that. Not for your business. If you want somebody that wants that style, I'm going to charge you full price, whatever I charge. And if you want to mark it up, go ahead.
Okay.
And he felt offended.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Whatever. I'm good.
Yeah. So it is important to separate and keep some stuff for you.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't like that, but I think it came to that point simply because I've gotten popularity with artists and names that can bring me up further than working for a company. Like I said, this guy was starting up his business and he wanted me to incorporate that. Well, if it's starting up his business, it's going to bring up his business with my style. What if I leave?
Yeah.
He can't do that anymore.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But then he gets a right over my style, so that's not going to work either.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I want to build that up to where I can animate it, make comics out of it, and just kind of make it Pinedo Studios and make it grow as that.
Yeah.
Not just give it away to somebody.
So it's not really a matter of quote unquote selling out.
Right. It's not about selling out.
It's really preserving your style to do what you want.
Correct.
And not have someone else, hopefully, not just doing what they want, but at one point stealing your style.
Right. Which is very doable. I had, it's kind of like the emojis. I don't know if you have Snapchat.
I used to.
You used to? Okay. You know how in Snapchat you can make your own little character?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, people think that because they can make their own character in Snapchat, they own it. They don't. It's part of Snapchat. It's all in the terms and conditions. Whatever you build on there is theirs. It's not yours because it's their style that they made. It's the same with me. I remember a girl sent me a message saying, hey, where did you get the app to make those cartoons? And I'm like, oh, I'm like, it's a Pinedo app.
Yeah.
And she goes, really? Where'd you download it? I'm like, well, my mom downloaded it like a long time ago in 1975. I'm like, and there's only one. And she's like, shit. Oh shit, you doing by hand? I'm like, yeah, those are mine. There's no app. It's me. You know, if you want a drawing, I'll be glad to do it for you, but this is my rate.
Yeah.
And she kind of felt stupid in a way. Like I said, my little character makes people feel stupid. And I was okay with it because it's not an app. It's me.
Yeah.
Making it an app is not a bad idea, but I don't know. I just got to work on that.
Yeah. It's
not a bad idea, but.
Not to bite on your style, but yeah, when I put up a picture that I made using film,
right?
It's like, hey, what app did you use to do that? And well, that's called a Kodak Tri-X app.
Yeah.
Then it's like, well, what the fuck is that? And I'm like, no. It's pretty funny nowadays where, and you know what? There is probably a filter for that shit. But yeah, I mean, it's harder to have an app for something so dead on, something so specific as your drawing in on that. So
yeah, I think that's another thing that I've come to hate about the times we live in now. People think that because they can get an app and make a logo. They are logo designers.
Yeah.
They can take a picture with their phone. They're photographers.
Yeah.
They can make an emoji, a cartoon. They're illustrators or comic artists or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad because it's like I tell people, can you do that without the app? Can you do that without your phone? And that's one thing I can do. It's you take away my phone, you take away my computer, I could still do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
How many people out there can do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Same with you. I mean, anybody could put a filter on a phone, but can you go out and take the picture and make it look like like you do? I know I can't.
Yeah.
I can't Photoshop it and make it look like that. But even without Photoshop, can I do that? I'm like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah,
it's something special that you've learned, that you mastered, and these people just take it for granted. They're like, oh, we want an app for it.
Yeah, and I do think I think it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Because I want people to get creative with the tools that they have.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think maybe like from my point of view, sometimes I think like, okay, maybe photography shouldn't be so difficult. Right. And a lot of people believe that it isn't. And, we were talking a little bit about how I like to shit on wedding photographers and stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
And, but it's like, no, photography is, a camera is just as, again, and I keep fucking bringing this up every single time, a camera is just as difficult and as complex an instrument as a guitar.
Right.
And, you need to learn it, how and what all that shit does in order to be a guitarist.
Right.
Just like you need to know all and everything that it does in order to be a
good photographer.
And stuff. And it's just like, but again, if it keeps somebody creating something,
yeah,
I'm all for it. Like, do it, but just kind of, I don't know, man, just kind of
think outside the box a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just,
it's like everybody's doing the same thing. And it's like, do you want to be different, or do you want to be a cookie cutter photographer?
Exactly.
Or a cookie cutter illustrator
or
designer? And I don't want to be a cookie cutter illustrator.
Yeah.
I have the skills of doing different styles, which I haven't done in a while, but I know if I dedicate the time and I go back and do it, then I can. Just to bring up something, back when I was in college, I did a 3x5 illustration in my life drawing class, and it was pretty photorealistic.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened with that illustration, it was a charcoal. We had a model come and sit for us, and I pretty much drew her pretty photorealistic.
Uh-huh.
Kind of like what Picasso did when he was a kid. And I'm like, oh fuck, I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the teacher goes, or the instructor goes, that's pretty badass, bro. And he's like, can we use it for the art show? And I'm like, yeah, go for it. So they took it, they used it for the art show, and that was the very last time I saw it.
What?
Yeah. I guess they sold it. They did something to it. I don't know what happened to it. I don't know if the school kept it. I have no clue what happened to it, but I haven't seen it since.
Wow.
And I remember him telling me, he's like, you got skills. You can have, he asked me how long I've been drawing. And of course I gave him the whole story, right? I'm like, since I was a kid, I just picked it up.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, you got skills, compared to your classmates, you're like on another level. I'm like, oh, cool. Thanks. Yeah. But it kind of, saddens me a little bit nowadays, because I see people doing photorealistic things.
Yeah.
And I think, well, what's the difference between that and a camera?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't get me wrong, I admire the fact that they could do it.
Yeah.
Because I was able to do it, and it took me a while to learn it. But I'm like, how about putting a little bit of your style, your touch on it, so that it's not just a picture? And that's cool too. But I think once people start getting creative and stepping outside the box and giving it their own little style, kind of like I did with my anime,
yeah,
it makes it a little bit more, it gives it a little bit more value.
Yeah.
Like I said, because anybody could take a camera, take a picture, put it on a light table, trace it, and give you the exact same thing, right? But not everybody can take it and change it up a little bit and give it a different little touch of style.
Yeah.
And
That's how you make it your own.
yeah, that's how you own your own stuff. You own your own work. People see you as different from everybody else. You know, like the photographers, the wedding photographers, they're all the same photographer.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not, but they're all doing the same thing. What makes you different?
Yeah, it's very difficult to discern a style or a photographer from one to the next.
Right.
So where do you see moving forward on your work and on your work? What's like your dream project or your dream job at this moment?
Dream project,
because it seems like you've gone through a lot of styles,
right?
If you put your time into it, you pretty much, it sounds like you can get it done, you can perfect it,
right?
Do you still want to finish a comic book? Do you want to maybe do a full cartoon, or what's your
yes.
yes.
Yeah. I want to do a comic book, but I think I have fears.
Mm-hmm.
The fear of not continuing to do it like a regular comic book series.
Okay.
Spawn, for example, he's on number 300 or 400, and it's taken him 20 years.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, if you do the math, it doesn't really add up. It's supposed to be one a month or one every 2 months. Maybe it does add up.
Yeah.
But
well, no.
I kind of, as a comic book, I want to be able to do my comic book with this anime style.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of have the fear of saying, okay, this is the last issue. Being 5 issues into it, being one story into it, and calling it done. Then saying, okay, now I want to make this book a movie or an animation. And then saying, okay, now what? Do I want to make more animations? I already did that.
Yeah.
Then I kind of don't know where I want it to end. I really don't. Because I think, well, shit, what if I alter my style?
Yeah.
which was what I was talking about earlier, adding a lot more detail, but keeping it anime. So it's a real, I don't know. A lot of, I've learned in my life that the more I plan, the less it happens.
Okay. Yeah. I hear you.
Every time we plan something, it never goes the way you expect it. I mean, there's some people that have that niche that say, fuck it, we're going to plan. It's going to go like this, like that, like that. Boom. It happens.
Done. But yeah.
Not with me.
Well, I'm not trying to tell you what to do or go, do the, well, if I was you sort of thing, but going back on an anime thing and on a manga series, it's like, if you go on an anime, some of these animes are just 12 episodes long,
right,
and then they're done. Some manga series are just, while they can take years, but for the most part, there is a beginning and the end, and then they, they move onward and upward or something like that.
Right.
That's never, as far as an option for you, like, okay, I'm going to make this story or this comic book, make it 10, 12 issues or something like that. Because right now, even like in the long format on TV series, I really love things like True Detective, like, even stories like Black Mirror sort of thing, where True Detective is one season, 10 episodes long, done. Next season, True Detective, completely different sort of thing happening. 10 things done. And in Black Mirror, they just break it up into
bunch of little episodes.
Vignettes sort of thing. So my question is, like, in the comic book world, I do understand, like, there's Superman 5,234,000 and there's another one coming up.
Then let's reboot, start all over again.
Yeah, exactly. To where
same story, but a little bit different.
Drawn different, probably, sort of thing. Yeah. And I understand that those are money makers and things like that. Yeah. And I'm sure the stories end up repeating somewhere along the line. But making a comic book, would that are you married to the fact of, like, it has to be a longevity sort of series, or would you be putting, okay, this is a story, once upon a time, the middle, and then happily ever after sort of thing, or not so happily ever after?
I'm not opposed to it, but I guess from the time that I've been into comic books, I see them kind of going on the longevity.
Mm-hmm.
But I really am not opposed to just finishing one story. But then I think, cool, I'm going to do a 5-issue series, then what? Then am I going to split the characters, give them their own series or their spin-offs?
Yeah.
I mean, can I do that? Or can I just hand them off to somebody else, have them do that? Would I come up to start?
Yeah.
It's a possibility.
Well, like Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Now, supposedly, he's going to make his 10th movie and leave, right? But supposedly, all his movies are in the same universe.
Yeah. Machete, Kill Bill, and all those?
Yeah, they're all from the Inglourious Bastards to Pulp Fiction to, Reservoir Dogs. They all take place in the same world. So some characters are related to some other characters, and
I didn't know that.
Foxy Brown. Yeah, they're all. If you pay attention to them, they're.
Yeah.
Now I'm having trouble putting some of them together.
Right.
But they're all supposed to be in the same universe. They're all connected somehow.
Okay.
They're all supposed to be connected somehow, and that might be an idea. Like the biggest example that people go into is that Reservoir Dogs,
right,
and Pulp Fiction. The one of the guys in Reservoir Dogs is brother with Vincent Vega.
Okay.
In Pulp Fiction, and sorry.
Oh, you're good.
And that's the biggest connection. And then there's a couple other connections to where, man, I'm again put myself on the spot. I can't remember a couple other ones, but there are some people are related to other people in his world, sort of thing. To where I think even going back to Django Unchained, somebody's related to somebody else. I mean, I can't remember. But anyway,
man, I'm gonna have to go back and look at it.
Yeah, and there's I'm sure there's an article online that
like the Star Wars family line.
Yeah, like the Star Wars family line, but somewhere along the line there's connections between everybody and stuff. So, but yeah, I mean,
yeah, I keep on going back to that simplifying. Like when I was taking animation in school, my instructor always told me, simplify your story and have a beginning, middle, and end, kind of like what you said. Make it, if you can narrow down your story to one sentence, it'll probably be successful.
Yeah.
I mean, so far I can't. I mean, I have like but I had multiple scenarios going on. I guess when I was building my comic in the beginning, I couldn't, I wanted each character to split up and have his own thing. But then when I was doing that, I noticed that in the comic book industry, whenever that happened, the character died off. And it wasn't as important as it was when it was in a group.
Okay.
And I think I learned from that, that you can't, it's kind of like a band. You can't keep them. You can't just bring in a new member and have it be the same band. It kind of kills the vibe, I guess.
Yeah, and Mick Jagger's work away from the Stones is never as good as he was when he's on the Stones. Sort of thing. That's
kind of like the Guns N' Roses thing too.
Yeah, exactly. But hey, man, you
it's an idea though. I mean, it's
not to tell you what to do or anything, but as far as like telling a great story, very simplistic style, that's Ernest Hemingway in a nutshell. I mean, I'm a huge Ernest Hemingway fan. I mean, especially his short stories.
Yeah.
That's like a simplistic way of telling a story that really hits home and stuff. So,
then it's like, okay, am I going to be writing? Am I going to be illustrating? Getting my ideas from my head to paper is kind of difficult.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think that in pictures I'm better.
Yeah.
But then again, like I was saying, when I was doing that book, I didn't write it down. I just went. It just flowed.
Okay.
They were in my head. I just did it. There was no script, no anything, and I was done. But now, as I look back, I think, shit, I need to write this shit down.
Yeah.
And to make it flow a little bit better, give it a better feel. But I don't have the time for that. And then I don't know if I should just take the phone, record myself talking, which I have done. Then I listen to myself and I'm like, damn, you have horrible voice. Like, stop talking.
Go away.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot of things about me that are just off.
No, I mean, I just wish that one day, everything, we all have the time to do it. I mean, I've been working on my script for past 10 years, you know,
Right.
and it's just like, God damn it. I mean, in the premise, you know, it's a good story,
Yeah.
but in the end, it's like, okay, so what's the middle and what's the end sort of thing?
Yeah.
So,
Then how do you make it flow from the beginning to middle to the end?
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
the whole, you know, where you need time and to yourself to do that. And
Yeah.
you got to be careful. Sometimes, you know, when you ask for time, you can't do much with it sometimes, you know. You sit here and
Hey, but sometimes it is the best thing, you know.
Yeah.
I think the times where I was off, not doing anything, not doing any illustration, they kind of helped me. Because when I went back to drawing, I'm like, oh fuck, now I could do this.
Okay. All right.
And I don't know if it's something that just my brain clicked back on and said, you got this like perspective. Boy, I sucked with perspective.
Okay.
But then when I came back, I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna do perspective. I was throwing those anime style perspectives where like fisheye views, and I'm like, holy shit, I could do this. I didn't know I could do that.
Okay.
I'm like, all right, cool. Let's incorporate this and that. But you know, people don't ask for that. People are asking for like, hey, I want a picture of me and my wife. Así juntitos. Like, all right, but put her head over here on this body because she wasn't so heavy.
Funny.
All right.
But you do see that taking a break does allow you to breathe a little bit creatively, and then when you attack it again, it's good for you then.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that. In fact, this year and last year, I hadn't posted anything since. In fact, the last drawing I did last year was Billy's.
Mm-hmm.
That was and I did that in mid-December. Since December till about last weekend.
Okay.
I didn't do anything. I was busy working on graphic design, not illustration, and I figured, fuck, okay, jump back at it. So when I jump back on it, I'm like, okay, now I want to put more detail into it.
Okay.
I want to make the colors brighter now. And it kind of worked. I like them a whole lot more than what I did back then.
Okay.
You know, and it's just a year. It's about a month and a half of time off that where I didn't draw anything.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even do my little character, which I was so used to doing them on a daily basis with whatever was trending.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the thought of bringing him and doing a daily thing now with him. And I've slowly started doing that. And I know that it's different from what it was before.
Okay.
I can feel it.
Yeah.
And I know when I put them out, it is different. Same with the drawings, you know, with the regular customers paint drawings.
Yeah. Nice.
So the time off always helps. At least for me, it does. Even though I kind of think it doesn't. I think I'm just spinning my wheels, wasting my time doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always busy doing graphic design. I'm working. But it helps. It's helped me.
Yeah, and just because you're doing graphic design, that doesn't mean that you're working on your personal stuff. You actually learn how to separate them both.
Yeah, yeah.
And
so, like my day job and my graphic design are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Then my illustration is a different thing. So, when I work with Danny, I do signs, interior signs. Exterior signs, illuminated signs. So I get into the details of how a sign works, how it's built, how it's fabricated, screws, light bulbs, all that shit. And then when I go back to drawing, and even environments where it's going to go. So when I go to my drawings, I'm like, well, shit, I could incorporate some of that here.
Uh-huh.
I know how that works.
Okay.
Now I just got to look at how vehicles work, how that works, people think that, okay, when you make me a drawing, it's not just of boom, there you go. You know, there's thought that goes into it. You got to analyze how things are made and designed for a purpose and how they move. Like cars, I don't draw many cars, but now that I've looked at them, I'm like, well, fuck, it's got this, it's got that. I don't know what the parts are called because I'm not big on cars, but I'm looking at them and I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
If I incorporate them in a drawing, I'm going to be putting all that shit in it because it's there. And when somebody's into cars, they're going to look at it and say, hey, you're fucking missing this or that or that. Well, I don't know. I'm not into cars, right?
Yeah.
But you don't want to piss them off.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to pull that crowd in also. So about 2 years ago, I was working with a guy on guns. I was doing his graphics, and I learned about guns and how that community of gun owners know every little thing about a gun. I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, hey, I need you to design. My last design for him was a 1911.
Yeah.
A handgun. So when I designed that for him, he got really picky on everything that or how that gun was made. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Because if all these people are going to look at it, they're going to nitpick it. They're going to come back on him. Then he's going to come back on me. And it's just going to be a whole shit. Okay. They're going to say, your gun looks cheap. It looks fake.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that when looking at something and how it's made and how it works, you got to put everything in to please those people.
Yeah.
Simply because you don't want to shun them away. And of course, I'll come back and say, hey, why don't you do this car for me?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're kind of setting yourself up to get more business in that aspect.
That's exactly what Arnold Schwarzenegger did in Terminator. He learned how to shoot guns the correct way, and when people looked at him, they're like, dude, it looks like you knew how to shoot guns. And it's like, yeah. I went with that instead of the Leonardo da Vinci one, where Leonardo da Vinci actually used to dissect cadavers, even though it was considered, you know, a heretic, and he could have been, you know, hung by the church. But he did it because exactly what you're saying.
Wanted to learn.
He needed to learn how it moves so that he could draw it better.
It's funny because when I started that comic book series, I started working out. This was before I was married.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started working out, I was following Arnold, and I was following his diet and all that. I'm scrawny. I'm a little guy. Mm-hmm. But I noticed that when I was working out, I'd feel myself, not in a bad way, but I'd feel myself to see where my muscles were, okay, and how they worked. And when I would draw something, I'd check how the arms would move, or in a different perspective, how they would look, and it all helps. And once I remember taking my artwork to a comic convention at that time, and I showed my work to I forgot what his name is, Garza. I forgot what his first name is. So I showed it to him, and it was a girl holding a gun. And he looks at it, and he points that out right away. He goes, hey, are you familiar with guns? This was back in the day. So I'm like, not really. He's like, yeah, I could tell. That's a toy gun.
Yeah.
He points that out, and then he goes, oh, and she's got, her hand gesture isn't right. And I'm like, fuck, how is he picking that up? Well, he draws this every day. He was drawing I forgot what it was. I forgot what the series is called, but it had a bunch of guns and heavy machinery and all that shit. And he knows what it looks like because, of course, he had to research it to put his comic book together, right?
Yeah.
And when he does that all day, he's gonna know that's not a real gun.
Yeah.
And I think from back then, I kind of learned that, or I tried to pick that up. And what that guy I was doing guns with, I had to, try to get everything zeroed in, so that if somebody calls me out on it, it's there.
Yeah.
I really can't say, like, what kind of gun are you holding? How do you hold it? Or
Wow.
What kind of rims are those? When I'm drawing cars. Or whatnot.
Yeah, it's just a drawing, right?
It's just a drawing, but nowadays people complain about everything.
Yeah. So again, going back to that entitled society we live in now, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, man, thank you so much for hanging out, man. I can keep you forever and go on and talking about a bunch of things, especially probably UFC and fighting, and then the drawings. Because how about we do a part 2, man? Because I really want to see where you go with the comic book stuff for sure. I mean, along with a bunch of other stuff as well. But I want to see where Little Pinedo goes and does his thing,
Yeah, I think Pinedo's kind of like those daily news cartoons.
Yeah.
Where you're going to see him every day clowning at something stupid like the Iowa caucus.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure he's got opinions on that, right?
The Iowa caucus.
Yeah. And tomorrow, I guess there's going to be a vote at
the impeachment?
Yeah, which I think there's probably not going to go, but I'm sure he's got opinions on that too.
Yeah. So, that little guy just says whatever he wants.
Yeah, for sure. All right,
but
man.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
You got it.
And talk to you soon, man.
Órale pues.
Órale. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed the conversation there with Mr. Martin Pinedo. Of course, all the information is in the show notes for you to please follow along in case you want an illustration of yourself or your family. I highly suggest it. Or if you're actually looking for a logo or some sort of design, hit him up, man. He's an awesome person, as you already found out, and a pleasure to work with and speak with. And of course, please, if you have any questions or concerns, you can drop us an email at thecommonrule@gmail.com. The Instagram is The Common Rule, and the Twitter is Restless Samurai. And of course, you can always follow along the blog at thecommonrule.com. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I will see you soon, or I will talk to you soon, and enjoy your youth.